As you know, it's 10:30. I always enjoy my chats with the New South Wales Corrective Services Commissioner, Ron Woodham. Ron's always got a story to tell, and there's plenty to discuss this week. A story on the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald, prisoners using Facebook indirectly through their relatives. We've got the latest on bikie gangs. I spoke to John Hatzistergos last week about people smugglers being housed in New South Wales prisoners because the federal government hasn't got enough room for them in other facilities. And I'm also very keen to have a chat to him about serious pedophiles and get an update on what's done with them once they're released, because there are many of them, as I understand it, released into the community. They could be living next door to you or me, and we have no idea who they are. Now, as you know, Ron Woodham is the only New South Wales prison officer to ever make it to the top job. He joined the Corrective Services as a boy back in the 1960s. Ron Woodham, g'day.
How are you, Ray?
You're looking pretty good.
And yourself?
For an old bloke?
Yeah.
Now, Facebook.
Yeah.
I warn parents here every day of my working life about using Facebook.
Yep.
It was revealed in the Sydney Morning Herald that indirectly some of the world's worst prisoners, which unfortunately are housed in your facilities, are on Facebook via their relatives.
Yes.
Not much you can do about it if it's the relatives putting them there?
There's not a great deal we can do about it, but the minister has asked me to have a look at what problems other states have come across in this area, and also to try and get in contact with the head of Facebook, which is nearly impossible to get to in America, to see if some of this material can be deleted from the Facebook.
You know, you make me feel a whole lot better when you say he's almost impossible to get hold of. When we have problems with Facebook here, it's like a Fairtingham secret society. They won't respond to our concerns, and I'm talking about concerns about children being preyed upon, and then they reluctantly take photos down. I believe that you'll be moving to stop photographs being taken in New South Wales prisons after this latest revelation.
I've already done that, Ray.
So no more photos?
There'll be no more photos for any reason. The reason for doing it in the first place was reasonable.
What was it?
Like if a prisoner's been in jail for some time and he's got kids, and they come into a visit section and they take a photograph as a family unit, and that's as far as it goes. But now this has gone a step further, so I crashed it. There'll be no more.
So it's gone altogether?
Yep.
Okay, you've got the worst of the worst, of course, down there in Goulburn, and we've spoken about them before. Have you had trips down there recently to deal with these particular people?
Yeah, I have, yeah. I can hardly hear myself speak, but I was there.
What, because of the hue and cry?
Oh, they were giving a bit of a razz, yeah.
Yeah. How's Ivan going? Still maintaining his innocence?
Yeah, he's shaved his head now and started to grow his Mexican moustache again. So he's going back to his old self, I think.
There was an Australian story recently about his divided family. It was a replay of an earlier program. But there's a sister-in-law that was on that program that still maintains, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that he didn't do it. Have you got any doubt that apart from what he's been convicted for, there are other bodies out there somewhere that he's responsible for?
Well, that's what the police tell me, and he's absolutely shown no remorse for the 7 murders he's convicted of, and of course women have vanished in other locations where he worked before these crimes.
I'm going to ask you one out of left field here, and I don't know whether it'd be politically correct for you to answer this, but you are in charge of all the prisons in New South Wales, and if there's a problem inside the prison, it falls to you and your officers to solve.
Yes.
Now, with no particular reference to any other issue, if a group of your prison, let's not say at Goulburn or Lithgow, but just one of your medium to low security facilities where, you know, the blokes there are deemed to be a classification where they're not dangerous, but they're being incarcerated just the same. They climb on the roof and say, jam it up, you Ron, I'm staying up here, we're not happy with the tucker, we're not happy with this, and we're not coming down. What does Ron Woodham do? Because we've had other people in other departments confronting the same issue recently. What do you do if prisoners, and I'm not talking about murderers, I'm not talking about really bad people, I'm talking about people who've done the wrong thing and are being punished for it and will be rehabilitated when they come out, but they're up on the roof and they're doing the wrong thing. What do you do with them?
Oh, I'd say to them, Ray, jam it up here, you're coming down. If you don't come down now, I'll take you down, and we've got a roof extraction team and we'll take them straight down.
A roof extraction team?
Yep.
What, as part of your overall command?
Yeah, in our emergency response group.
And they're trained officers to deal in those dangerous positions where dangerous people may be perched on the roof.
It'll probably take them longer to get up there than for us to take them down, Ray.
I wish the Department of Immigration had contacted you recently. We might have been talking about this for the last week and a half. Okay, I'll leave it there, and I appreciate your honesty in relation to that. Now, I've got in front of me, and I can't talk about this in detail, apart from the fact that it would be too distressing for my listeners. It's almost too distressing for me. I've got a list of the worst when it comes to pedophiles that are either in jail or have been in jail and are being looked after in a system that hopefully you know where they are, we know where they're being housed, and that children in the main are safe from them. Let me deal with a 46-year-old bloke who I can't name, who has a long history of sex offences against children, the first of which happened in 1984 when he was 21. He's been convicted of 17 sexual assaults. His victims have been prepubescent, that's between the age of birth and puberty. They're males. He admits to planning offences by going to areas where children hang around. He approaches children who look like they come from a poor background. He grooms them. If this bloke is not incarcerated and he's out in the general population, or he's even being viewed by you on a daily basis, how do we know that the public is safe from people like this? Do we have any assurances, or we just keep our fingers crossed and pray to God that he doesn't prey on our children?
Don't just keep our fingers crossed, Ray. Far from it. This particular individual is out again now. He's been breached on his what we call an extended supervision order.
That's an ESO.
Yeah, that expires in 2014, and he's out just at present. We don't think he'll last long, and we'll put him back in. But he's in accommodation that we own. He's got curfews on him. He's got satellite tracking, and in satellite tracking we can put exclusion zones around schools, bus stops, toilet blocks, and what have you. If he goes near them, they alarm, and if they keep going, we respond immediately ourselves and say to the police.
I've got a photo of this bloke.
He looks a classical pedophile, doesn't he?
Well, if you were going to do a picture of a pedophile, this would be the typical pedophile that you'd produce. Now,
you notice he says he's going to be a Qantas pilot.
What?
Down there, he tells people he's going to be a Qantas pilot.
That's part of.
In reality, he couldn't fly a kite.
So he lives in a fantasy world, and he does that to impress the young.
He's got the IQ of an advanced moron.
Now, there's a family that you've showed me about, a 63-year-old child sex offender who, again, I can't name, but has a long history of sexual offending dating back to 1962. He's a convicted pedophile with 10 convictions. But as I read through the 2 pages, he's currently in custody, having been sentenced at Waverley back in February this year for failing to comply with his reporting obligations under the Child Protection Register. But this, would I be overstating it to say this is a family of pedophiles?
Yes, his father's been charged with pedophile offences over a number of years within the family, and his son's been charged with pedophile offences as well. So there's 3 generations of them. If I had my way, I'd put the 3 of them out in the middle of the desert somewhere and
leave them there.
Yeah, leave them there.
And there's no. See, one of the things is people, the do-gooders, would say, well, we've got to try and rehabilitate. This has been happening for generations in this family, grandfather, father, son.
As you can see, even when he was out on an ESO, which is a Supreme Court order, he was still accessing pornographic material on his phone and child pornographic material, and that put him back in, and he's coming back out on the 14th of next month.
He's a non-Indigenous person, but he has been known to prey on Aboriginal youth.
That's true.
Who may be vulnerable.
Yeah, between the ages of 9 and 12.
And is it the same type of offences for both his father and his son? Are they on the
same
persuasion?
When he comes out, by the way, he'll be on electronic monitoring, real surveillance by a group that I've created that does 24-hour surveillance and checks, and I mean real surveillance. And and called the Community Compliance Group, and they'll be breathing down his neck.
He's 63. Let's hope he doesn't live to be 64. But the reasons we can't identify these people, you should be able to blow his face up full page in the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Is it because some of the offences relate to people connected to him and therefore we identify them?
Yeah, and you've got to really get a approval from the victims before you go that far away, because there'll be victims out there and the family of victims that don't want to go through it again.
And then you go from that 63-year-old to a 23-year-old who is genuinely paedophilic and has a sexual interest in mainly girls aged between 2 and 8.
That's right.
And he's only 23 and has been known to, he's been known to authorities since he was 8.
That's right.
For apparently acts on his 4-year-old sister at the age of 8.
That's correct.
Some people are just born bad, as you and I have said before.
Yes.
So where's this bloke up to at the moment? Where's he?
Well, he's out, and he's on an extended supervision order until 2014, and he's under the same conditions as the others, with the Community Compliance Group breathing down his neck. And I mean, they're the ones that breach these people. We've had 24 people recently placed on extended supervision orders, and they've put 17 back in jail.
And evidence across the world would suggest that these type of people cannot be rehabilitated, nor do they want to be rehabilitated. They see their behaviour as normal.
Yeah, they see it as normal, and they've got no intention of changing their behaviour at all.
And finally, a 43-year-old, whom again we can't identify, first charged back in 87 and 88. Again, his victims are boys between the ages of 7 and 11. And again, he has a history of offending. He has been very aggressive towards your officers, I'm told, in relation to the ESO when he was in breach of one.
Yes, he and 2 female officers at that, coming up nose to nose and shouting in their face. Went on a bit of a rampage where we've got him. He's in our accommodation. He's in now though, but he comes out in January 2011 because of that what he did then, and it even threatened them with a knife, and we put him back in. But he'll be under the same conditions as the others when he comes back out.
Okay, we've got members of outlaw motorcycle gangs being committed to stand trial over murder. Last time we had a yarn, you had a large number of outlaw motorcycle gang members in your facility. Do you know how many you have there at the moment?
Around 170.
And are they difficult to deal with, or are they compliant?
Well, we're pretty ruthless in dealing with them, Ray. When they come in and go through the initial reception and assessment, they're notified that if they rear their head, they'll vanish. We haven't had any great problems with them at this stage. A lot of them are on remand and totally involved in their court cases, but when that's over and if they end up getting convicted, that could be a different set of circumstances. But we're ready to manage any of these people, and be quite honest with you, one out, they're pussycats.
Individual.
One out, they've got a heart as big as a caraway seed.
You have information via your intelligence that can identify where these people come from and where they are heading pretty easily via their colours and their tattoos. And I've got a briefing note in front of me, so that they're tattooed in some cases so heavily, it's impossible for them to dissociate themselves from the various gangs they belong to.
Yeah, they're tagged for life, and they've got no intentions of leaving that group. They'll die being affiliated with that gang.
Does that make it easier for your officers to deal with these people when they come to your attention because of those tags and because of those colours?
Yeah, and we photograph them, and also the colours they wear, their jackets, tell us what status or rank they hold within the gang. And like, could have a sergeant at arms, you could have the president, members, and they've even got probationaries with it tagged on their jackets, so we know exactly where they stand in that gang. And we concentrate on the leaders. There's just no leadership of gangs in jail. It's the first time in their life that they've ever been told what to do and where they're going, and they've got no control over it. And we'll take whatever action it takes to break them up. And if they keep going, we've got a program, a security threat grid program. These people, if they start to rear their head in prison, they get a warning. They notice that warning, they vanish.
They vanish to another facility?
They vanish to another facility with no contact with anyone.
None whatsoever?
None.
How difficult... You've been a prison officer, and I come into contact with prison officers on a regular basis. And my general comment is, they say, oh, you work hard. And I say, mate, I couldn't do your job. I couldn't do your job for 1 hour, let alone 1 day, 1 week, 1 year. Because they're dealing with people in the main who are people you wouldn't want to have contact with in your normal day-to-day life. They obviously want to make a difference, the vast majority of your officers, but how tough is it day to day for those men and women in the various facilities?
Look, Ray, it's extremely tough in some of the sections of the prison system. And in some ways you've got to have people handling these real heavy groups that are very firm but fair. And if... whatever force is needed to handle some of them, they have the ability to do it. The
bikie gangs, the outlaw motorcycle gangs, and you talked about them being, if they're one out, they don't display the same form of courage they do in a group, Do they in any way try to influence a pecking order inside a prison, so to speak? And do they basically stick in their group as opposed to other groups from other backgrounds?
Well, we don't now. We break them up and spread them around. But years ago, after the Milpera massacre, when we had the Comancheros and the Banditos in, we kept them in 2 different jails but together. And if a prisoner wanted something within the group, the president would come and make representation to the superintendent for the others. And we learned from that. That's not the way to deal with them in the future. And although they didn't give us a great deal of trouble whilst they're in jail, those 2 groups, we now split them up and spread them to the 4 wings.
If I go back, and I've spoken to you about this before off air, the late Jack Gibson, I'm thinking it was about 1990, asked me to go to Parklea prison on my way to Penrith to call a game of football on a Saturday. Funnily, I should get a call from that lady about Red Cross, because that's what it was for, to raise money for Red Cross, and the prisoners were being sponsored, I guess, by relatives and by the officers to raise money for Red Cross, which was a very, very good initiative. And my role was to go out there and call a game of touch football involving the prisoners and elite Parramatta players. I'm talking about people like Eric Groth and Sterling and Kenny and Ella.
Good players.
Yeah, great players. And Jack had been in concert with a man, I think his name was John Sadler. I think he was in jail for an extended period and was subsequently released and returned to New Zealand.
And murdered again.
But he, I think, from memory, I think he worked in the kitchen out there. But it appeared to me, I'll tell the truth. When I went in, I was quite intimidated. And for anyone that's not been to prison before, it is very intimidating, very intimidating. And Jack had said to me, stick with him and no one will bother you. And because at that time I was calling the races and the trots as well as football, and obviously people have access to radios and were listening to me do all those sorts of things, they were asking me a whole range of questions, who's going to win, what's this, what's that, which was normal fare no matter where you go, be it at a pub or a prison or anywhere else. Blokes asking you questions. And one bloke came up and sort of got right in my face and said, I want to take issue with you about this bloke, this Sadler, swatted him, and I reckon his feet didn't touch the ground for about 5 feet, and he landed on his back and he said, don't you dare get in the face of our guest ever again. And I got the feeling that at Parklea, that Sadler was someone who was controlling things. Now, I don't know whether that was done with the express permission of the prison officers, and it was 20 years ago, Ron. But is that how things used to work?
That's how it was then, Ray, to be quite honest with you.
It did work like that.
It did work like that, and I could give you some war stories that would turn your hair on end with prisoners controlling things. I headed a group in the late 80s, and we started to take control back off the prisoners. They were called head sweepers. And to give you an example, if you went to a place like Park Lee, the head sweeper could give you a reception cap of heroin, and then you're indebted to them, and then you got to do what you're told.
Yeah.
We went through, and by the way, at that stage, some prison officers were involved with them.
Yeah.
And allowing it to happen.
Yes.
And I can tell you now that doesn't happen today. It took us a few years to get absolute control back, but we run it now. They don't run anything.
Yeah. Why was it done like that back then? Was it done because it was easier?
Oh, you get back to the old trustee thing. If you look at some of those American prisons, even if you go into them today, I went into a prison in California with 10,000 prisoners in it, and a prisoner met you at the gate and put you in a bus and drove you around inside a maximum security jail.
Yeah.
And they had that trustee thing that the head sweepers would run a wing in so much as making sure the food got to everybody and all the linen was laundered and that sort of thing. Well, that's over now. The officers are in complete control.
Is it easier to run prisons? I know it's a difficult question because you weren't the Corrective Services Commissioner 20 years ago. Is it easier to run them now or then?
Well, it's much easier to run now, and we've got case management now, and the aggression between prisoners and officers has been minimised. It's pretty hard for a prisoner who has a prison officer as his case officer talking to him about how his visits went at the weekend and how his family's going, and talking to him about the pictures on the wall of his family, for that prisoner to then turn around and assault the officer. It's been a hard road, but all prison officers get involved in case management now, and we've also got other management regimes for those who don't conform.
I mentioned earlier the flow of people either convicted or facing charges of people smuggling flowing to New South Wales jails, because I spoke to John Hatzister. You've got your first intake there, have you?
Yeah, we got the first 3 last night, 1 at midnight and 2 earlier. They're now in our custody, and they'll be treated as normal prisoners. And by the way, Ray, the official tag they've got is IMAs. Irregular maritime arrivals.
Oh, so it's gone all... See, I blew here about... the CEVs used to be illegal vessels, SIEV. Now it's irregular. Somehow the politically correct people got hold of it and they made illegal irregular. It's now transferred to IMAs. We don't have illegal maritime arrivals. We've got irregular maritime arrivals. So political correctness has gone mad. If I can finish on a positive note, because you and I have spoken about this on the phone before, what you're doing out at John Moroney with the training of various animals, companion animals, dogs. And now this has been, I didn't know when I first spoke to you, this has been happening for quite a while, but now it's a more formal process, and kennels have been built out there, and you are delivering to the public well-trained puppy dogs, thanks to some good work by prisoners.
Yeah, well, Ray, we've got a number of programs in the women's jail at Dilwinia at Windsor. We've got Adopt a Greyhound program. They only get 6 or 8 dogs in, but we're quite successful in adopting those dogs out after they're with the female prisoners for a couple of months. And I've just signed a memorandum of understanding with the RSPCA, the head of the RSPCA, Steve Coleman, and we've got 30 kennels out there now, and what we're getting is dogs that would have been put down, that have got a behavioural problem and no one wants to adopt, and we keep them there for up to 10, 11 weeks, and we're quite successful now in adopting most of those dogs out. And the difference it makes to the inmates is unbelievable. Well, you've got to see it to believe.
That's why I want to talk to you. We've dwelt today, as we often do, on those that can't be rehabilitated, those low-life pedophiles that we're referred to, and you want to take them out in the desert, I want to do something else to them, and the people you deal with at Goulburn. But these men and women out there, would it be fair to say, because of their involvement in this program, that you're more confident of the rehabilitation, that you won't be seeing them again?
Yes, I am. And to give you an example, we've got a wildlife care centre there too, with up to 200 animals.
I've heard about that, like a wires type thing with wildlife, yes?
We've got everything you mentioned there, from a crocodile to brown snakes to wombats and whatever. And there's one prisoner there, a female prisoner, who lives in the facility, and she's just put a parole back 4 months so she can complete a course.
What, she's eligible for parole now?
She's forfeited parole, knocked it back for 4 months so she can finish a course with the animals.
Well, that's an outstanding success story.
Yeah,
what a good woman.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, that's a good note to finish on. I just want to share with you, without embarrassing you, some of the things people are saying. Bruce from Stanmore says, so refreshing to hear Ron. You should be Australian of the Year. Daniel says, thanks very much for having someone like Ron Woodham looking after the jails. A couple of other people saying things that you and I would agree with about pedophiles, but we can't view here. Good to listen to Ron. I could listen all day, says Chris from Holroyd. Thank for the job you do, Mr. Woodham. Keeping these mongrels where they are is something we should thank you for. And that I could read another 20 emails thanking you for your time and your honesty. And that's the one thing we get with you. You come in here, you pull no punches, and we're indebted to you for that honesty.
Thanks, Roy.
Have a good Christmas.
And you.
And we'll get back together early next year and have another yarn.
Look forward to it.
New South Wales Corrective Services Commissioner Ron Woodham. And it's riveting stuff that we talk about here every time he comes into the studio, as is evidenced by the feedback we